Good Monday morning, everyone, and welcome to Perspectives. It is Monday, December 14th, and we are coming to you live on MTV, on our Perspectives Facebook page, also on the pages of Partygrenada and TNR Communications. I'm your moderator for this show, Brenda Batiste, and here with us is our Expert Talk panelists, Mr. Byron Campbell and Senator Christopher Daly. This morning, our special guest panelists will be Doctors George Mitchell and Bert Brathwaite from the COVID Committee. As you are well aware, our COVID situation has changed, and we are all very, very, very perked up to know how we are responding and moving forward with this. But before we get to all of that, gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing? How was the weekend?
Very good, good. If I rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, somewhere midway, about 7. I think because of the news, of course, the negative information. But I think what stood out for the week for me was the parliament, absolutely. You know, the chains and the opposition and so on. You know, it provided. It was funny. It was a bit of humor. Theater, you call it. So that certainly stood out. But all of this kind of get shut back. I mean, the whole parliamentary debate got pushed back as a result of the emerging situation vis-a-vis COVID. I'm excited this morning, anxious this morning to hear, from the experts in terms of a little more detailed post-press conference. So that is what's on my mind today, nothing else, how we move forward and what form and means and method we move forward in the context. Right?
Yeah.
I suppose for me it was a little different, yes. Watched what happened at Parliament as well. I thought it was a lot of theater as well. But I had two good spots this week, Brenda. I went visiting the House of Chocolate on Young Street.
Yeah.
To see all the wonderful products inside.
Yes.
And met two wonderful young ladies and introduced me to a number of products, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah.
And they're doing quite a number of things with the cocoa.
Yes.
And they have some really sinful desserts there,
Sinful.
I know. Sinful, indeed. Sinful is the word.
And besides that, I also met with my senatorial colleague from Nutmeg Association.
Right, Senator Roderick Sinclair.
Senator Roderick Sinclair, and I went sampling their products, and I can tell you, the nutmeg cooler they have is really a wonderful drink.
Really?
Yeah,
Nice.
and I would recommend it to anybody. I'm heavily critical about nutmeg, but I'm highly complimentary of some of the value-added stuff I saw there. I went visiting their shop, met with Roderick, and we spoke a little. So it was really great from that perspective, and I suspect you'll see and hear more about it in Parliament tomorrow when we start debating the budget in the upper house.
Right. Okay.
But just like my friend here, I was taken aback by this COVID spike, and that dampened the whole, psychologically everybody was gearing up for Christmas this week coming up here.
Yes.
Most of us get paid on the 15th.
Yeah.
And I was expecting a certain amount of share and parents with their children shopping and so on. Now everything is going to be kind of now more controlled and restricted, and so that is definitely a damper. And as Byron said, we're looking forward to the latest news, and we're looking forward to these interviews this morning with the two gentlemen, the two doctors, so that we can kind of understand how for the next week, and I presume for the next 2 weeks, things are going to unfold.
Right.
In terms of restrictions and what we do and how we do with our movements and so on. And I really pray and hope we don't get into no sort of panic buying kind of mode.
Yeah.
So I suspect once the committee tells us what is happening and the information is more ahead of the curve now and not behind the curve, probably that will help.
Yeah. And just to pick up on that, the information needs to be ahead of the curve because, we're a very small society, and from wherever you sit, wherever you are, whether you're on the COVID committee, wherever you are, people just share information with people, and that can get out of hand. So we really need to get ahead. There has to be some sort of, you would call crisis management, working tightly with PR So we are getting, people are getting the information. Okay, so we're on top of this. This has come to our attention. This is what we're doing. This is happening. Regular updates and so on. I think yesterday lots of people were on pins and needles waiting for 4 o'clock, trying to verify everything that was circulating from late Saturday through all of Sunday. So those are some of the things we just need to manage going forward. It really takes a hit on the psyche when people don't know what's happening or they're hearing various things, voice clips going around like crazy and all of those things. So you have to think ahead so those things are minimized. And you use the word restrictions, but what I would really like to hear going forward is how we are responding. The other R. Yes, is how we are going to respond to this, because this has happened. It has happened, and it is hard for us because, as I was telling you guys earlier, last week started to feel like Christmas for some reason. It just kicked in.
You were saying that. My take, Brenda, is that we've been through this before, meaning that in the early part of the year, I think the government and the whole the measures and the systems that were set up seem to have worked quite well. Information was readily available, it was consistent. So I think they have experience in doing this. They're not doing this for the first time, and that's a good thing. And so information. What we saw yesterday was, and even from Saturday, was a lot of information couldn't be verified, And so the social media really took this on.
Crazy.
So how does your regular media is coming post social media, so where do you get the certification and the verification aspect? And I think this has to dovetail social media as quick as possible, that persons have that confidence, because that's what you want. You don't want panic, you want people to have confidence in the measures going forward.
But how do you not panic if mum's the word?
Well,
because you if it's all out, if you're getting it from other sources, and that was my point really, getting ahead. That is that's a science of public relations. That's a science of public relations, controlling the narrative, taking control of the situation. The crisis managers bring what's happening to you, and then together you decide, how do we message this? What do we do? And I know before anybody is a PR person, a COVID man, a doctor, whatever, we're first human beings. And so that news alone probably would have just jolted everybody like, bam.
Because
so you're like, oh my God, how do we,
we have gotten so accustomed to hearing 1 case, 2 cases, 3 cases.
Right.
When suddenly you hear 27 positive cases and 13 in a family, it shocks.
Of course.
It shocks us as a public, because we have gotten really used to this 1 and 2 and 3, and we kind of believe that we have this thing under control, and then suddenly you get this mushrooming and this mothball and this whole so I think it really shocked a lot of us, and it's coming at a time when, as you say, Brenda, you're feeling the Christmas vibes coming in. Businesses were getting heightened activity as well.
Of course.
And then suddenly you hear this, so everybody's now worrying, oh my goodness, here we go again, we're going back into some level of, I don't want to use the L word, but some level of restrictions, and how that is going to now affect everything that is going forward. So it is really a sad situation from that perspective.
Yes, it is.
But as you rightfully say, the quicker we get information on the control and the response in terms of the contact tracers, the further testing, the updating of the numbers, then I think the more assured the public will get an understanding that this is under some level of control. I mean, they have started, the fact that they have identified the numbers, they have traced a lot of people. I was telling Byron earlier, in my business, one of my workers is already affected from the standpoint that he was called and told that he was in contact with somebody and now he has to isolate. So you start seeing some of the ripple effects, and you'll see that in many other businesses.
Absolutely.
A number of us are going to lose staff at a time when we need them, if we get heightened activity. So there will be some of that happening as well.
Correct. That's correct.
So
and for everything that's happening, I think the contact tracing, it's really working. The logs that businesses are keeping, the use of CT cameras and all these things, because just between Saturday and yesterday, the amount of people that has shared with me that they have been called and asked to sit tight because not to scare them, not that they have COVID, but you know your name was on this log at XYZ place, and XYZ there's a possibility that there may be a situation. So can you stay at home for the next 7 days, and we'll be in touch with you. So that I feel really heartened by that part of it is working, seem to be working really well.
Brenda, I want to add to that the testing, the contact tracing and the testing, and of course our own management of our own personal situation, I think is important. But there's another point I want to introduce here, because while this is happening, of course, in the wider world, particularly in the United States, Europe, the vaccine have started to roll out. And so in those societies, in those communities, although the cases are escalating, they can see the more prominent measures coming in, that is a vaccination. But what is disturbing about all of this, though, we are learning that, and this was carried on CNN, that a lot of these industrial countries, although there was a meeting of the G8 before with an understanding that vaccine will be purchased in a global sense and distribution to poor countries, we're not seeing much of that. What we're gathering is that there's a sort of hoarding, there's a sort of piling up. You know, countries are buying several times more the amount that they need because they have the cash advance to purchase it. And it's a business, first and foremost, business arrangement. And that's disturbing because we're not hearing enough about the distribution to countries of developing countries that don't have the cash to purchase the
but
vaccine.
for us, through the COVAX, because this group, the group of countries on this side of the world, through COVAX, we'll have access to it. But as down the road, another fork in the road with that is that all these vaccines and things we're hearing about and seeing in the UK, on CNN and wherever have you, the WHO has not approved any vaccine as yet. And that is critical for us because until they do, because that's the protocol, that's how we get to start to use it. What has happened in the US is that the CDC and the FDA and these people have approved, but the WHO itself has not gone behind any of these products as yet. I guess they're going through their their testing and measurement and evaluation and so on. So that too is a little delay for us. So that's why it's so important, and that's why it's so concerning that we now have this happening here. So our response is
two points I want to raise on that, on the vaccine side, is that yes, availability or access to the vaccine is one, but remember this is a double dose thing.
Double dose.
And there is an administrative nightmare to follow up on the second dose for people and to have their card and all that comes with that. And then there's a huge cost that comes with that as well, because you have to and then you have to get people to come back in. And so that's one. And countries like us that don't have the kind of money capacity like other countries have. It's going to put a strain on us as relates to that. And of course, the second point is the whole issue of this vaccine and its acceptability and what is happening now with some of it as they started rolling it out. We've seen other things coming up, and certain parts of the population, children under 16, pregnant women, and so on and so on, would not have access to this immediately. So there is a lot happening around the vaccine that as countries like ours that's small and micro in the scheme of things, it's going to be way down the line. Now that could be a good and a bad. The good being that the longer it gets to us, we see and probably more issues that may come up, maybe rectified with this vaccine. And the longitudinal part and the studies with this is going to be beneficial to us the longer we wait. But the other side of that, of course, is in the time it takes to get to us, we have to make sure that we continue to follow the protocols.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We
are going to be responding
of the protocols that because people say, okay, we have a vaccine, man, what is the problem? I can chill out now, we've got a vaccine coming. And that is going to be a detrimental mistake that we're going to make. It has to be that we keep everything tight from now till probably the second half of next year, because we have estimated in programs previous that that's where probably we'll see this. So we have to just keep reinforcing to our people that no easing of these protocols.
Right.
The social distancing, the sanitization,
Yeah.
the washing, the wearing of the mask has to keep on being in place.
Just before we go to the break and take our guest panelists, as you talk about easing, the opposite of easing is the R word I don't like, restrictions. So in response to everything that has happened over the weekend, there's been a call by many Grenadians that probably locking down again is the best option. I mean, I don't think it is. How do you gentlemen
Chris
feel?
would respond maybe from a business point of view, but when I gathered all the information and I understand that all is not in that today, but what the personnel was saying yesterday in the press conference that they didn't say it's likely to get worse. They said it will get worse. In other words, they told us to anticipate a worsening situation. Understanding our society, understanding our community, what I've seen, around and following from earlier in the year, I think I will support restrictions. I mean, restrictions doesn't mean lockdown. Restrictions may mean how you deal with restaurants, how you deal with bars, how you deal with public events, some curtailment of movement after certain hours, after midnight, whatever, But I think that where the population is, and my sense in talking to people, I think there's an acceptance in the society for some measures of curtailment, some measures of, you can say restrictions, you can call it what you want, but I don't think that we should leave it entirely to the goodwill or for persons to say, okay, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that,
Yeah.
We have,
we get
in
that,
certain,
but
in certain communities.
the response shouldn't be panic though.
No, not panic,
Yeah.
but firm
Yeah.
and measured.
Because trying to control what happens after midnight, how do you
Yeah.
control what happened before midnight? So let's look at it like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really behavioral.
Yeah,
and how you
behavior.
manage behavior.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Well, I mean, I support what Byron is saying in the sense that I don't think we need to lock down. I think we need to talk about the situation and how it is evolving. And if it's projected to get worse, then we must put in restrictions. And I believe the restrictions will come in terms of what Byron said, restaurants, public events, and so on. And I'm not sure about the hours and how we regulate that, but I do believe that most of us in the business community is aware and continue to use the same protocols that we have. It's just that we're going to have to get a little more sensitive and know that we know that this has happened and so on. I had a meeting with my staff Friday just to say the same thing, that this is a festive season. You need to be careful with your behavior and how you behave, because it is still out there. And this is this situation that developed over the weekend is an example of that. And you need to just continue doing what you're doing. But I don't think lockdown is the solution. I think limited restrictions would certainly help once we understand how the situation has evolved and the severity of what we need to do and implement. We can't leave it up to just behavioral and what people do. And that is a reality, because some people are just not responsible in their behavior.
Yeah, and it's not a situation anymore where you come in quarantine. The possibility of what has happened is that it impacts our community.
That's right.
And there's a very real chance of more of it happening. So in that sense, but it cannot be panic. It cannot be a panic response.
And I mean, the thing here is community spread, and we have been so fortunate up to this period to not have a serious issue of community spread. So this has to be the priority now, and containment. So all of us as a people have to work with the authorities to ensure that this is the line we're going down,
And talking about all of us, because we seem to feel that the responsibility for what happens to us lies elsewhere.
Yeah.
Well, while that may be so in terms of the borders and who come in and who, we all have to behave in a way to prevent, to make sure that it doesn't come our way. And that kind of behavior is wearing your mask, sanitizing, wherever you go. If they say enter your name into the log, you put in your right name, your right telephone number. When you're in the supermarket and they have the markers, you don't breathe down the person in front of your neck. You stay at the back where you are. So that is what all of us have to do. People seem to be getting kind of worked up about, well, I'm being responsible. but that's what it calls for. Your continued responsibility to ensure it doesn't come your way and that you are protecting others around you, i.e. your household, your workplace, your church, wherever. So that's how I look at it. And then you assume that everybody have COVID. So then that will take care of a lot of
This is why we
matters.
have the distance here. You know?
But our guests are waiting via Zoom, and we take a quick break. When we come back, we have Dr. Bert Brathwaite and Dr. George Mitchell from the COVID Committee. This is Perspectives on a Monday. We'll be right back.
Viking Engineering. Heat, ventilation, air conditioning, and refrigeration engineers and contractors since 1985. Authorized dealers of Toshiba Carrier Corporation. Suppliers of highly sustainable air conditioning equipment which saves up to 50% on electrical consumption. The choice of equipment is yours. Air conditioning services. Air conditioning system consultation, design, fabrication, installation, and maintenance. Ventilation services. Indoor air quality analysis. Exhaust and fresh air system design and installation. Refrigeration services. Installation and maintenance of display refrigerators and walk-in freezers. Contact Viking Engineering, the HVAC-R experts. Often imitated, never duplicated. Call 444-4934 today.
This Christmas, we need the good vibes more than ever at LA Purcell. Shop all new selections at our home goods, appliance, and hardware stores. Brighten things up at our color center with paint to put the finishing touches on the industry's best building supplies. Last but not least, our annual yard sale is on again for 2 weeks at the LA Purcell Car Park in town and 3 weeks at our River Road store, both starting December 5th. Come and name your price. And remember, Purcell's motto is cash if you have it or credit if you want it.
It's that special time of the year to wish upon a star with Star Malt. Drink and win cash prizes just for you and add merriment to the season.
So this Christmas, drink Star Malt and check under the red Star Malt crown and win cash to help complete all the things you need this Christmas. Every drink gives you a chance to make your wishes come true.
Blender, buy it. Ham, purchase it. Christmas shopping, spend it. $20, $50, $100, and it's a big one.
$500.
Cash, and Star Malt, of course. Prizes are redeemable from the Partygrenada Limited main office, sales office, and sales trunks. Offer valid while stocks last. Terms and conditions apply.
Merry Christmas from Star Malt.
There is something new to the classic WESTERHALL rum look. WESTERHALL Estate Rum. What's your number? Drink responsibly.
Hey love, it's Maya here from Chez Maya's Way, the company that brought you the famous Let That Mango Body Butter. This year, we are bringing you something very special. It is called 7 Days of Glomas. We are partnering with over 20 local businesses to make this the biggest, most diverse giveaway yet. And it's so easy to win. Just come in at the right location on the specified dates and buy a jar of Let That Mango Body Butter. And you get the chance to dip and win different prizes from skincare, hair care, cakes and pastries, jewelries and accessories, photo shoots, perfume sets, and even a Christmas ham. So come on out and celebrate with us this Christmas season.
Should you wear a mask outdoors? Hey, I'm just masking for a friend. Besides, it's the law. A message from the Ministry of Health. Be COVID-19 smart. Wear your mask.
Dreaming of taking a break and escaping to an idyllic, happy place? Well, finding it does not require you to go too far. You already live in paradise. All it takes is for you to go out and discover it. Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique are blessed with a wide variety of accommodation that satisfy any taste and budget. Find the one that suits you and your family and treat yourself while having peace of mind that your health and safety is a priority. Knowing that we have gorgeous waterfalls, stunning beaches, and flavorful cuisine, let's be tourists in our own islands and enjoy paradise at home. Taking a break and escaping to an idyllic, happy place? Well, finding it does not require you to go too far. You already live in paradise. All it takes is for you to go out and discover it. Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique are blessed with a wide variety of accommodation that satisfy any taste and budget. Find the one that suits you and your family and treat yourself while having peace of mind that your health and safety is a priority. Knowing that we have gorgeous waterfalls, stunning beaches, and flavorful cuisine, let's be tourists in our own islands and enjoy paradise at home.
skin that I can't believe. Take a trip to the sea. Let your hair run free. Boy, you're a rebel in disguise. Is that the devil in your eyes? We fell in love right by the ocean. Made all our plans down on the sand. We fell in love right by the ocean. Made all our plans down on the
Welcome back to Perspectives. Again, thanks to everyone who's joined us this morning for the program. Our special guest this morning, our guest panelist that is, doctors. Welcome back to Perspectives. Thank you so much everyone who has joined us on MTV and of course on the Facebook pages of Perspectives, Partygrenada, TNR Communications, and MTV. Our special guest panelists this morning are Doctors Bert Brathwaite and Dr. George Mitchell. They are from the COVID committee. Of course, we are based on news coming out of the weekend. Grenada's COVID situation has changed in that we've had a cluster, a spike, if you will, of COVID cases emanating from a particular source that is a resort and in the south of the island. Both gentlemen are joining us via Zoom. Dr. Brathwaite, you would have audio and video. Dr. Mitchell will only have audio. So we'd like to say good morning and welcome to Doctors Bert Brathwaite and Dr. George Mitchell. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, Brenda.
Hi, good morning, Brenda, and good morning to the rest of your panelists, and good morning to all your listenership, both in Grenada region and internationally.
Okay, great. Nice to see you, Dr. Mitchell. Thought we were just going to have your audio, but it's nice to see you. So thanks for coming up.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, appreciate it. And of course, our expert panelists are here, Mr. Byron Campbell and Senator Christopher De Ali. We first like to start by asking if you gentlemen, in the interest of, well, just everything that has happened, if one of you, and Dr. Brathwaite, I posed that question to you, if you can just give us some sort of summary as to what occurred to lead us to this point, the news coming out of the weekend.
Well, good morning again to you, and good morning to listeners and viewers. Basically, what happened is that the hotel, we had a situation where it was picked up that one person during surveillance testing, one person was positive, and that then led to contact tracing, and the contact tracing led to other immediate family members of that person. And of course, once you're in that situation, the team went in and they would have checked a number of the guests at the hotel. And once they checked the guests, they found out that quite a few were also positive. And in addition to that, there was a case or two outside and not related, as far as we know, presently to the situation. So that was it in a nutshell, basically as a result of surveillance, what we call surveillance, where you keep an eye out in various areas where you know people will be at risk. For instance, you periodically go and you test health professionals who are on the front line. You will check folk who are working at the airport, people who are in contact with travelers, people who are in contact with patients. You will periodically check them and to see if anyone is turning up positive. And then, much to our surprise, we found this big cluster of patients there at Sanders, and that's what we'll be dealing with over the weekend.
Okay. Dr. Mitchell, can you speak to us about the protocol that Sandals, what's in place for Sandals when the guests come in from the time they leave their destination at the point where they get to the airport? Talk to us about what happens. What is the interaction?
The protocols at Sanders mirrors what we have been doing in the country over the last few months, meaning that every guest of Sanders must have a negative PCR test to begin with, must not be more than 7 days old. And I just wanted to point that out. If you have a test that is more than 7 days old, then our protocol says that you should not be. Now, there has been, and I must say that, there has been 1 or 2 persons who have landed here with test results maybe 8 or 9 days, but our folks at the airport are being vigilant. Whenever that happens, we would swab them there and then. So they come in with a test of 7 days or less, negative PCR. They are picked up at the airport with special transportation, persons who have been trained to stay safe, sanitized, wearing masks, etc. And they are basically, routed to the Sanders compound or facility. And in there, they exist in what we call the bubble, meaning that they are not allowed to go anywhere outside of the hotel. And they exist wearing their protective equipment, and the workers would have been trained to take all the other protective measures as well to minimize the risk of being contaminated by anyone. So, the vast majority of guests, their stay is usually 7 days. And after the 7 days, they are bussed back to the airport and back to their destinations. So in a nutshell, that is what we have been doing with the guests at that particular resort.
Okay. Panelists?
I suppose, morning, gentlemen. Pleasure to have you on the program. My question is on the issue, and I don't know if Dr. Bert or Dr. Mitchell will take this one, but it would appear from the information, and I'm going on the assumption that the information we have received over the weekend has been correct, in that the staff member who was tested positive and allowed to go home to our families, and of course we're hearing about the cluster at her family home as well. The question here is, what kind of protocols surrounded the staff in particular at the property, and in terms of their release after work or after being in contact with guests and so on? Was there a weakness in that side of the protocols for the staff? Because this is where the contact tracing is now being extended far and wide, because once the family is tested positive, then you have to check all the contacts of the family as well. So was there a crack in the seam of how the staff was dealt with their protocols and their release into the public?
My understanding is that the staff, before they left the compound, they would have to change from the wear, the hotel wear that they would have put on, and would have showered, and then they would have been taken out from the hotel in a bus, a special bus that was organized by the hotel, and taken to an area where they would have picked up transport. In some instances, obviously, this would have been public transport to get to their homes. But before they left the hotel, they never went out with their hotel wear, as far as I can gather. And that was what we were led to understand. But here's the situation, Chris. Even if you do that, if the person has become in any way had been in contact with someone who was positive for the virus, and that person obviously was exhaling particles, and the mass, if perchance, really a lot of it comes down to the way you're wearing masks. And we are told that all the workers, as a matter of fact, Sanders said specifically, if they found any workers not wearing masks, they would immediately suspend them, or there would be some disciplinary action. But if perchance, I'm not saying that this happened to the individual, but the mask was not worn ideally. It doesn't take very much. Don't forget, there are people who sometimes say, look, I do not know how I got the virus. I was as meticulous. I followed everything to the T. The virus is an extremely small particle, and it can go through, the smallest of the areas. And so an individual can be doing everything that they're supposed to do and still get exposed to the virus. And but of what we say to individuals, please, and this is not only for Sanders workers, for everyone, what we be seeing around the country day in, day out, and of course, unfortunately, not enough people be listening to us. Wear your mask whilst you're in public. And let me say something about that briefly. Wearing a mask is not just about say you have a mask on and then it's beneath your nostril. The mask must be at the base of your nose. You should wear a mask that has a wire in the top of it that you can press it down firmly onto your nostril. And then it must be fitting tightly around very snugly around your face. If you see a gap you can see a gap, or if your glasses are fogging up, things like that, you know that mask is not effective. So a lot of this is about the wearing a mask. And if we could get 90+% of people in the community wear masks, we could go through this epidemic. Once we have got control of this situation, we can go through this epidemic relatively safely. But if the overwhelming majority of people in public are not going to wear masks, then it's very difficult, and you do not know. You have to assume that everybody you come in contact with is potentially positive. So that's it in a nutshell.
As a follow-up question, Doc.
Senator Diali, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, Doc.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Dr. Brathwaite said. I had the advantage of looking at the Sanders protocols, and they were, in my view, very, very robust. When I looked at other protocols of other countries and other situations, they matched up to that very, very well. So I had no doubt in my mind that if they are followed in a meticulous way, that the possibilities, the risk of transmission was going to be extremely low. However, our people are sometimes, and I'm not trying to cast aspersions here or blame, but sometimes we let our guards down, thinking that everything is okay, and that is where we get caught out. So that is it. They did have protocols, they did have training, and all of that, but sometimes old habits they die hard. And our guards, obviously, in this situation, must have been let down, leading to increased risk. And we have seen what has happened as a result of that. So I cannot overemphasize what Dr. Brathwaite has said, that we need to take every precaution and at all times contemplate that the person next to us, in particular situations are potentially infective, and so we need to protect ourselves.
So, Dr. Mitchell, my follow-up question to you is, seeing that you understood the robustness of their protocols, what kind of testing was in place for the workers in particular before they're released back to their particular residences and so on? Because that certainly would have had an impact as well if we could have picked up a positive case before release. So the question is, what level of protocols was in place for testing of staff before they were sent back out?
So this is what has happened. As Dr. Brathwaite indicated, we have been doing routines. We've been doing surveillance persons on the front line with test persons who coming into the ER, or when I say the ER, the emergency room or health centers that have any flu-like symptoms or anything like that. And of course, and that is where we yes, if we were just going to sit down there and not test anyone, we would have seemingly have a bigger situation on our hands where we did not know what was happening. So as a result of doing proactive screening, this is where we picked up that particular.
Thanks.
I have
a worker, and
doctors, and I want to.
I hope I'm more than.
And I want to congratulate and recognize the efforts of yourselves and the committee, and by extension the government. It's always an issue of balancing lives with livelihoods, and it's sometimes a tough balance, you know. And both are important, both are critically, in fact, important. But the reality is that we've seen in a very short space of time, within 24 hours, that our cases have doubled, escalated exponentially. With that reality, and so much is still unknown, that we've been informed that further information would be available from testing today. What can the public expect going forward? In your opinion, the measures that's existing, is this adequate in the present context that we have? Given that I mean, you used the word earlier, control. I mean, there is no control, I mean, in this matter, other than the testing and the protocols. How can you respond to that? What can the public expect going forward as of today?
Well, I think we can expect, I just one would prefer, it's obviously got to be a lot of tightening of measures in the community as a whole to try to limit the spread of this virus any further, whilst we go in and try to identify all the possible individuals who are positive. It's going to be almost a stepwise process. If we are successful in containing it quickly, then there will not be need for as many restrictions. But if it sense that it is even the greater numbers of people affected than we immediately originally anticipated as of yesterday, type of thing, then we will have to. The measures will have, the more they spread, obviously, the tighter the measures will have to be. Basically, it's a sad situation because we were not being complacent, but we were feeling confident that we had a better control of things in the country, and then all of a sudden you find this massive pocket of the COVID virus present in individuals.
Dr. Brathwaite, based on how the virus works and what we currently know, can you give us some measure of layman's understanding as to how many employees and how many guests at the Sandals Resorts are currently positive, And how does this then dovetail, or what are the, I know testing is ongoing, but in terms of your contact tracing, just what can we wrap our heads around to expect and the impact it would have going into the rest of this week?
Well, I will let George. George probably has the more current figures in terms of numbers of individuals who are actually positive, because we have picked up a few more testing over.
Dr. Mitchell? Dr. Mitchell?
Okay, we seem to have lost him. Basically, the numbers went up to somewhere in the mid-30s. I don't want to quote an exact figure because I didn't check it just before coming on here. But we can anticipate, as Dr. Charles would have said yesterday, as the minister would have said yesterday, we cannot anticipate that the numbers will grow. One can't tell to what extent until you finish all your contact tracing, and that is going to take a few days to complete.
And how does it break out? How does it break out with the guests and the staff?
Well, I think it was something like of the order of 11 of the 16 or so guests who were checked were positive, something like that. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, how many guests are positive and how many staff members are positive?
As I said, I'm sorry, I don't have the exact statistics beyond what you were given yesterday. But suffice it to say, Brenda, that it's a high proportion of the guests that were tested, that's for sure. High proportion of the guests that were tested. And that we are finding quite a few contacts in the community who of the staff workers who were positive.
Okay.
I mean, the actual numbers are obviously important, but the more critical thing is to try to wrap around and be able to identify every possible person who is positive and to have them isolated. And all the staff from Sandals, they have been asked to stay in-house, and that is not to go out and circulate. The health authorities will be in touch with them and will be going out to do further swabbing of these individuals during the course of the day. That's the first thing you do. Obviously, you look at those folk who are there, then you look at their immediate household members as well, if they turn up to be positive. Because one of the things about this disease is that a number of people are so mildly, may not be affected at all. You may have been carrying this virus and not have any symptoms. Or you may just have mild symptoms, a bit of stuffiness, and nasal feel mildly unwell, and you don't think this could be COVID, because you know that COVID is something that causes hospitalizations, could cause quite a bit of mortality. We see it in big countries, right?
So at present, Dr. Brathwaite, you're saying that all the positive cases are exhibiting mild symptoms.
Yes, from my understanding, none of the positive cases so far have any moderate or severe symptoms.
Okay, so no hospitalization.
Sorry?
No hospitalization?
No hospitalizations. That's the information I got yesterday.
Okay. Just to let viewers and listeners that we've lost Dr. George Mitchell for a bit. We'll try to get him back on with us. So, Dr. Brathwaite, you're it for now. So you have to take you have to take the incoming. I have just before I let the panelists here continue with you, just to back up a bit. You mentioned that the testing at Sandals, of the staff members, and the positive, and you mentioned something about picking up on contacts in the community. Clarify for us where we are at today, Monday, based on your testing of the Sandal employee. Have you picked up anything in the community? We heard of the family of 13 individuals. Have you picked up any in the community that were impacted because of?
I don't have that information as a present, because this is a very dynamic business. As actually, we meet again tonight, and tonight we will probably get a little better overall picture of what is happening.
Okay.
What would happen is the individual who was found to be positive, they went in and they checked that family, family members, and quite a few of the members within that household were positive. And there were other workers who were found to be positive, and they will have to go and check the immediate household members present. Then they will have to look at individuals who this person was in, any person who was positive was in contact with for any significant period of time, especially if they were in contact with them in close conditions and if they weren't wearing masks. So you're going to use all of those criteria to decide who the primary contacts, who the contacts at the workplace. Has the individual been in, sitting in an office and beside in close proximity to a person who's positive, then you would check all of those individuals. If you find an individual in an office who's positive, the individuals who are in immediate contact with them, what you do immediately, you ask them to quarantine at home. What, of course, it isn't instantly that you can get up to everyone, despite you're using all of our resources, but we try to get to them as soon as possible. That's their contacts, and check them. And if their contacts are positive, if the contacts of an individual you found was positive, then you look at the secondarily, you know, at the persons who were in contact with that person. So it's a chain event, and you just have to reach out as far as you're picking up positive cases, and then you try to circle around and pull everybody into the net and have them on lockdown within their houses until they're tested, retested, and found to be negative.
Right. Gentlemen?
Question for you, Doc. The positive thing about this is, of course, the fact that you indicated the hospitalizations up to this point have been none, and that is good, because, you know, in any of these things, the concern is the run on the public health system and the impact of that on our ability to handle that. And I know this is something that would concern a lot of us, how we manage that, and the fact that they are all basically showing mild symptoms and there's no need for that. That is a good thing, I think, as we manage this particular situation going forward. But the other question to you is, as this matter unfolds this week, today and the other days coming forward, do you believe that we are going to end up, because from listening to you carefully, it would appear that the cases are going to rise. I don't want to use words like exponential, but when we understand how this disease operates, and if we were not paying attention to the wearing of masks and so on, then we expect that the multiplication is going to accelerate. And coming from where we were, 2 active cases, which I suspect is no longer active, and now to go to 40, 50 odd cases in a very short time is going to impact how people behave. So the question is, do you foresee, as we move forward for this week, that the restrictions are going to come? We were discussing earlier restrictions on in-house dining, public events, bars, restaurants, and so on. Do you believe that that is going to come and we're going to see some of these restrictions as we move ahead in the week?
I would not be surprised if that is the case. Basically, when information, we feed our thoughts up to cabinet. We are advisory body to cabinet, and so we send up what our thinking is, and then cabinet makes a decision as to, and of course, not only do we send up and say what we think, but why we are thinking so. Then cabinet makes a decision on what is the best route to take. And so yes, there may well be further restrictions. The term lockdown, as we saw it in the midst of the epidemic back in March, I don't anticipate that in the very short term. But because we've got, I think, many countries have got better at managing this, and you realize what you can do to allow commerce still to go on, businesses to stay open, but stay open in a safe manner. Sorry, just let me move this phone away. 1 second, thanks.
Why Dr. Brathwaite gets his phone, it's getting
Yeah,
very
it's,
interesting. Yeah, it's getting very interesting.
The issue of vaccines, or the accelerators getting some.
Yeah, and I mean.
Sorry, my apologies. Yeah, so we would anticipate that as you go along, you will see. I was mentioning how we handle it before we locked down the community and we kept everybody inside. What is perhaps more important? I tell you what is most important now. We are in the festive period of the year, with Christmas, a few days off, and New Year's Day. If our community can develop the resolve to bypass these festivities in terms of you sit with your immediate family, and I know it's not quite the same as we all like to have our friends all around, and we move from household to household and we exchange greetings, etc. If we can decide as a community to forego that for this year, that it will make a tremendous difference in terms of how we come out of this period. I.e., all the fetting and all the congregation, because you cannot, if you are at a fete and you're drinking, you can be part of a super spreader event. I can be here and be feeling pretty well, and I go to a bar and I'm having even by a bar, sitting with friends, and you're sipping, you're drinking, you're enjoying yourself, and that I can be the focus of a super spreader event. And you take that and you multiply it, and you know the size of crowds that you have at many of these events, both leading into Christmas and especially then on New Year's night. If we can forego those level of activities, that in itself will have a significant impact on it. We also have to be, again, start to be very careful about what we do in terms of gatherings like at churches and funerals, the after-hour activities, that is a no-no. And the restrictions that we had within in the churches, where distancing was critical and the wearing of masks throughout. There are certain areas where we know that the spread is going to, and all the studies have shown that things happening, folk in gyms, folk in restaurants, in the churches, the studies have shown that in those type of settings, there's a higher risk, and you can add to that social activities such as partying. So it's a lot as well about how we handle it as a community.
So my doc, and again, due respect, because I know you're following the science as a specialist, as a doctor. But given that situation and given what's emerging, I still hear a strong appeal for individuals to curtail their behavior. When earlier in the year, when the situation was not as dire, when it was, we had very few cases, we went into a complete lockdown. What will trigger, from a policy point of view, you advising the cabinet or the government, what will trigger and advise from your committee, from yourselves, for further restrictions on the population movements and actions, rather than what I hear you asking now is for an appeal? And this is most appropriate, understanding the season.
It's largely about watching if you pick up people who are immediate contacts and household members largely of the in that case, and the first cases you picked up, you expect that. But if you now start to see a more distant spread contacts of these individuals outside of their household, have gone into other work environments, that will certainly trigger a much tougher response to the situation in terms of limitation of activities. One of the areas we plead with people again, just as a little aside, individuals, is in on public transport for drivers and the conductors. They're the ones, they're at risk because they are taking up people daily. And if they're not wearing masks, and if they're wearing masks down on the chin and over the mouth, they can easily come in contact with, and they can be part of this further spread of this disease. So basically, it's watching the numbers and looking carefully at the contacts of these individuals and what is happening. Right. In terms of the individuals, if people have been going into workplaces and you check in their workplace and you don't find any, you just restricted to cases within the household, you're much more assured. But if you start to see it in a number of workplaces, or especially workplaces, then you will have to be much more vigorous in terms of our response, our advice in terms of how we respond to it.
Dr. Brathwaite, what's the current status now? What's the situation at the Sandals Resort in terms of operations? And number two, how regular, or what was the testing? How rigorous was the testing our authorities were going in to do tests at Sandals, if any?
What I do know that the system has a surveillance where we go through to hot areas. We will check staff within the hospital periodically. You might check members of the RGPF. You might go into LD homes. Similarly, you would have gone into the Sandals Hotel. Now, how often we were doing that, I do not know, because our committee is an advisory committee, but I'm not out there on the ground knowing that it's controlled by the Ministry of Health, the extent to which they were going in to check workers in Sandals. But suffice it to say that the case was picked up from what would have been thought to be just routine checks to the best of my information. And clearly, even, you see, it's a question of resources, because whilst we are doing that, don't forget that every day flights are coming in. Every single person coming into the country is being PCR tested. The nurses have to move out to, there's still a few people are being allowed to home quarantine. They have to move out to the centers. They have to go to the various apartments and guest houses and hotels where individuals are. And these nurses have to still contend with all the daily responsibilities in the health center: diabetes and hypertension, dengue is around. All of these are things individuals have, the health workers still have to contend with. So it's been a tough time for those, and I put up my hat to those community health nurses especially, and to the entire medical team, the laboratory technicians. Those laboratory technicians have been working throughout the weekends, even outside of this period, and people don't know what is going on. So there has been, every day, if we have 80 people coming to this country, 80 people are going to be tested at some point in time, as over the last 2 weeks or so. So from the time we dropped the idea of a green zone and yellow zone and red zone. So normally your capacity is working at the maximum. Now it is supermax with an event like that. As a matter of fact, we'll move to the point where we discuss getting in the other people with a sort of health background trained in how to go and do the swab. But even when you do that, you still have to have the resources within the laboratory. And we are fortunate that we have St. George University here that is assisting in settings like this. But these it still requires a large measure of manpower.
Okay. And the current status of the resort in terms of operations?
Well, in terms of operations, no guests. They're not bringing in any guests. They have routed the guests who were supposed to come to Sandals to other facilities. So, of course, the guests there, and we must recognize that they have guests there, over 50 guests, and those guests have to be looked after. They will have to be, in most instances, quarantined for a period of time to make sure that they're free before they're allowed to go onto aircraft. But all their needs have to still be met. They're not in their houses, so you have to have staff there that will attend to them, to the guests over the next week period or so.
Well, I think that is it for me in terms of the questions for the doc. We just pray and hope that over the next few days the numbers don't, get to the level where it becomes unmanageable. And I support the fact that we have to at least get the PR and the message out, doctor or people, to let them know that, unfortunately this is happening in a week when, as you indicated earlier, there is a lot of festivities that were planned around Christmas and Old Year's, and we just now have to get a little more restricted in our own personal behavior and how we bring in people into our own very personal space to reduce the risk and to keep observing the protocols even a little more rigidly now. The transport issue with the buses, I think, is something we need to push a lot more. We haven't been, and I believe we need to now insist that people just wear the masks and try and reduce the risk as may be associated with that, because that has a potential to disrupt businesses as well.
Yeah.
We can't get staff to work as we ought to.
Yeah.
So I support that, Doc. I believe the PR has to intensify from the ministry side and from all of us who have businesses and run businesses. We need to intensify that aspect of it. So I hope over the next few days that we could keep this within a manageable, area and a manageable way, so that the spread doesn't significantly increase. So,
yeah.
Well, as you said, the PR, we have invested a good bit in the PR. But what is interesting, Chris? They looked at the number of folk who viewed these some of the clips we were releasing, and compared it with other clips that had nothing to do with health, and you put the material out there, and people quickly start to listen and probably don't even finish listening. They don't want to hear that, because this is against the grain of your thinking, especially at this time of the year. But it will come down, and I can say in closing that all those events that where people would have been anticipating, crowds of 50, 100, 200 people, even though a lot of them would have been refused, but the few that were allowed and originally given permission, as was said in the release yesterday, all these event planners should consider that the original approval that they would have been given, that approval has been rescinded as of now, and unless, of course, otherwise they are told that is, if you plan an event and got permission from the Ministry of Health to go ahead in a controlled manner, even that level of permission is now rescinded until further notice, as the press release said.
Yeah. And before you go, Dr. Brathwaite, what will you say to Grenadians? There are many Grenadians this morning feeling as if, okay, I've been behaving, I've been wearing my mask, I've been doing everything I needed to do, and here we have a situation where it seems as if on the property of a resort that one of us became exposed. How do you address that?
I can only say to them, you continue to do what you can best do, and to encourage those around you, and especially obviously some of our younger folk to to be aware. You know, one of the things, Brenda, that we have not taken, I don't think that people choose or they choose to ignore, just look at what is happening in a number of big countries. Look at the mortality in some instances, in some places, and big states. Germany this morning, you hear of and we know the German systems tend to be pretty good. South Korea had a battle, well, not to speak of United States of America. They look at what is happening in these big countries. We are at risk. And as a matter of fact, I go further. The further on down in the epidemic we go, and as Mr. Chris would have said earlier, we can anticipate probably not getting the vaccine until into 2021, mid or beyond 2021, and until such time we have to continually keep our guard up by wearing, and the most important thing is wearing a mask and wearing it properly. Secondarily, also important, social distancing. Those two things, if we social distance and we wear those masks properly, we can reduce the risk. And if an individual does that, they have done all that they can do, and encourage others around. And when there's recognized people are not obeying those recommendations, move away from those scenes so as to reduce the risk. But I say to folk, look, you have a team of folk out there who are dedicated. I've been in touch with them now for the entire year, and we're going to be trying our best to pull this situation back, get things back under control. But don't anticipate that you can have a Christmas and New Year as you usually do.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Brathwaite. Appreciate you joining us this morning for this extended version of Perspectives, and I'm sure we'll be calling on you again. Thank you so very much.
Thank you a lot, and thanks to your panelists, and good morning.
All right, stay safe. Bye-bye. So, Senator Diali.
Yes, well, I mean, I think Dr. Brathwaite captured it well. I think for the next few days, the authorities, and they have been doing a good work to try and keep things controlled and in check. I also want to make a mention of the police. I think the police, their work have now just increased tenfold.
Yeah.
I mean, they were going to be putting in extra attention, paying particular attention in this week as the festivities were ramping up. But now with this particular situation in COVID spread, their duties are now going to become even more tested. With their human resource and their available resources. So I think with that said, we need to help as individuals, businesses, communities, whatever the case is, bus drivers, all of us need to help and pitch in, because it's all of us in this. So
absolutely.
We can't just say, oh, the Ministry of Health and the frontline workers and so on, they are doing their part. We have to now do our part to ensure that we keep everybody safe and intact.
Yeah. Safe, intact, and sober.
Yes.
This news is rather sobering, actually, because what the spike has done is really brought this thing closer to home, and just news that one family or one household, it may not be a family, it could be, a different layer of whatever their physical infrastructure is, but just how that has impacted, that is enough to bring the message home to all of us. And yes, we may feel a certain way, and normally when if you've been I'm doing everything I can, so why it happened over there and it affect me? I mean, that's a normal human reaction. But once we surpass that emotion, it is very critical, I believe, that we all just pay attention, do what we can, the best way we can. And it's not only about protecting yourself, it's about protecting others.
That's right.
Because we know we could ill afford.
And saving lives.
Any
we haven't had a death yet
spike.
in Grenada, but we don't want to have any.
Right. And it's heartening to hear that so far of the 30 odd cases that we have, hospitalizations exhibiting mild symptoms, but that can change.
That's right.
And the numbers can change as well, as is to be expected. So let's just go out and do the best we can. Our other panelist, Byron, he had to run off. Mr. Campbell, he had to run off this morning. It's been an extended version of the Perspectives. Of course, it came in the public interest. This is very topical. Every Grenadian, wherever they are in the world, is cued into this, and from going from 2 active cases to now some 30 something odd in a matter of a couple hours, well, 72 hours or so.
That's right.
Yeah, it's rather alarming. So rightfully so, the attention has to be placed on that. And in the coming week, you know, we shouldn't be surprised if we are back for another one as the week progresses. But as we leave, your final thoughts, Senator Diali?
No, well, I just want to continue to say to all of us, pay attention, as Doc said, wear a mask, sanitize, social distance. Please do not panic. There is no need to panic at this point in time. The health authorities will be giving us more and more information daily, I suspect probably more than once a day, on how the situation is unfolding, and we need to pay attention to that and do our own little part. And try and behave as normal as we can. Yes, we're going to be a different Christmas, a different Old Year's, but it is what it is.
Yes. Yeah, seriously. So everyone, have a good Monday. Stay tuned in to, you know, find out all the information as to what's happening. As Senator Diali says, we shall be receiving information updates, if you will, you know, as things come to hand, as the COVID situation changes and more information emerges as to what's happening. Have a very good Monday. It's been an absolute pleasure coming to you here this morning. I'd like to again thank MTV so very much. We went over time this morning, so we thank you for that. We sincerely appreciate it. And all the Facebook platforms who brought us, we appreciate that as well. TNR Communications, Partygrenada, and our own Perspectives page. Nazim Benjamin for your streaming services. Thank you so very much. For producer Richie Oliver and producer Kishan Thomas, and Senator Christopher Diali and Byron Campbell. Our guests were Dr. Bert Brathwaite and Dr. George Mitchell. I'm Brenda Batiste. Do have a good Monday.